And I'm going to start. Buongiorno.
Buongiorno.
So, hi to everybody. And I'm so happy to see new and returning faces. And for those who don't know me, my name is Natasha Dikareva. I was born and raised in Ukraine, Kiev. And I also studied and lived in St. Petersburg, Russia. And since my early childhood, I was mesmerized by Greek and Roman mythology. In my 20s, I went to study Italian culture and Italian language for 3 years.
Wow.
I even became a member of Dante Alighieri Society. In 2007, I went to Italy, but as a tourist. And finally, in 2018, 2 years ago, my dream came true. And I went as an artist in residence. I was accepted to this fantastical place called Creta, which in Italian means clay, in the center of Rome. And I spent the whole month there living and working at this place. So during this presentation, you will see the fruits of my labor, along with the masterpieces of ancient and Renaissance and Baroque periods from Rome. And of course, there is so much to see and so much to tell, but because of the limitations of time, I'm just going to show you the highlights of the quintessential Rome masterpieces and tell you a little bit how it has been intertwined with my work. So I will be sharing the screen with you in a couple of minutes. During the presentation, you're welcome to ask me questions. You could write in the chat, or you could ask me in person. If you're asking me in person, please do not forget to mute yourself. If you're writing me in chat, bear with me. Sometimes I get carried away and then I don't notice that something's there. But I will make sure that I will answer your question at the end of the session. And then I will show you what's cooking in the studio. And we have a Q&A session at the end. All right. So here we go. Rome Airport, 2 years ago, back in 2018 in June. I cannot imagine something like this happening right now without any social distancing or masks, but this is how it looked. And I hope we will someday return to these times. This is the view from the apartment I lived. It's a courtyard in the Trastevere neighborhood. It's one of the ancient, oldest, most authentic neighborhoods in Rome. From 753 to 509 BC, it it belonged to Etruscans, so you could imagine. But I lived in an apartment, which is a baby. It's only 200 years old, which you could see on this wall. And to go to the studio, I had to cross the river, which is called Tiber. This is a bridge called Ponte Sisto, and it's a beautiful pedestrian bridge, which was connects the Trastevere, which means beyond Tiber, to the central part of Rome. And in the times when Romans conquered Trastevere, it was only one wooden bridge. And now, of course, you can imagine there are multiple bridges. And so every day I would cross this bridge. This is Trastevere neighborhood at night, and you see the public applauding some performers. On the background, there is a fountain which belongs to this Piazza di Santa Maria. The fountain is the oldest fountain in Rome. It's from 8th century, and it's really safe to walk at night. I've been walking several times after 2 or 3 in the morning, and people really love being outside. So this one is a typical mixture of modern and ancient. And you see those bikes and people in on the background, and the little fountain over there, which the water is drinkable.
Mm.
Gelato is my favorite. I could eat it 3 times per day easily, and it's like the best, of course, in Italy. This is the prototype of the future goddess, and she looks to me like she could be a character from Raphael or Caravaggio painting. And on the way to my studio near, so this is one of the fountains on Piazza Navona, and it's called Fountain del Moro. This guy is a Triton. Triton is a sea god, and he blows into a conch shell to control the waves, either raise them or calm them down. I just want you to look at the texture, and they're usually depicted as merman. And hear me working on my first sculpture, and I'm trying to intertwine all those different elements, and you see some aquatic elements, and guess what she's going to have. And of course, it's a gelato, and she has a little bit of this, the sea scales on her arm and the aquatic ears. So the gelato she's eating is a seaweed gelato. I wonder if it's even exists, but you know me, I like to mix things up. And this is her back with the 3 guardians on top of each columns and in between their arches. So you walk everywhere, everything breathes, every stone breathes with antiquity. This is the wall, and you could get the sense of how, you know, they're recycling their materials. So the stones belong to different era and how it has been built. It also gave me an inspiration for the clay choice. The clay I chose, it's called raku clay, and it's a great clay to work with. It dries fast, and it fires well, and it has this very similar texture to the wall look. So here I brought her to Forum. Actually, she is on the top of Capitoline Hill, and on the background there is Forum, and the Forum was the teeming heart of ancient Rome. For centuries, it was the center of day-to-day life, and the site of triumphal processions, of elections, of the venue for public speeches and criminal trials, and gladiatorial matches, of course, nuclears, commercial affairs. And Forum it has been called the most celebrated place in the world. And of course, it has a long history from churches to temples. And I just wanted to have my first sculpture, this amazing energy behind her. This is my next sculpture. It's just a maquette. It's not a sculpture yet. My dad was a poet, and I always like to dedicate a sculpture to him when I am away working somewhere. So it's supposed to be a Pegasus. Pegasus is an emblem for poet's inspiration, and he doesn't look, and it's a hybrid between so he has wings. It's a horse with wings, and of course he doesn't look like a horse yet, but I'm going to do my research, and he will. So this is a really famous fountain at Piazza Navona. It is called Fountain of Four Rivers, and on each corner there is a figure that represents God, that represents the river, and also a continent. And in the center of the fountain, there is this Egyptian obelisk, which was brought by Caracalla. Of course, this fountain was designed in 1651 by Gian Lorenzo Bernini. Caracalla was much earlier, but the Romans, they like to recycle their monuments, and the obelisk reflects the idea that divine light will fight this chaos. So I think we need it right now badly. And chaos here is represented by the cave. And next to this is the Danube sculpture, which also represents Europe. There's an amazing hippocampus or seahorse. So I think he's absolutely magnificent. So this was the first horse I saw. You, of course, can encounter some live horses near Pantheon. And to talk about Pantheon, we probably will need another 5 hours, but because it's an amazing monument, which dedicated to all gods, but we don't have time. So if you wanted to do something, come back. Here's next morning, I went to this museum on Capitoline Hill. It's called Capitolini Museum. And you see me next to the remains of Colossus of Constantine. It was suggested to be made around 325, and it was found in the 15th century near Basilica Maxentius. And I just want to talk that he looks much different than previous emperors. Because previous emperors, they looked somewhere between classical and idealized, but Constantine, maybe because he was very, he established a tolerance towards the Christianity. So, and the era when he was living in, it starts with the symbolic representation. So he is more abstracted. So this figure was 40 feet tall. You can imagine how humongous it was. And inside the museum, you see this amazing relief from Arch of Marcus Aurelius. And here he is riding 4 horses, the chariot of 4 horses. This arch didn't survive, but lots of reliefs were found and recycled, and I'll show you later where. So here's inside of this museum, amazing frescoes from Giuseppe Cesari from 16th to 17th century, and they actually meant to be the tapestry, but then they painted it as frescoes. I love the expressions of these the horses. And take a look at the braid. I'm going to borrow this braid in my sculpture. So the scenes in these frescoes are portraying the historical events in the ancient Greece. Oh, I'm sorry, ancient Rome. It's like another horse here. And this is my favorite Marcus Aurelius equestrian sculpture, the survivor there are actually only 2 bronze equestrian sculptures that survived. Everything else was recycled into another objects or coins. So Marcus Aurelius was one of the 5 good emperors, and he ruled from 161 to 180. And he was a philosopher. Here he is depicted without any armor or weapons. So he is more of a bringer of peace. And he ruled during this era, which was called Pax Romana. So it was relative stability, at least inside Roman Empire. There weren't any wars. And during the Antonine Plague, I just thought it would be relevant to us to mention this. It was in 166, and Marcomanni Wars. He wrote amazing work, which I have. It's here. It's called Meditations. I think he looks like my grandfather. I would love to have somebody like him, like my grandfather. He was a philosopher. In this book, it actually wasn't meant to be published because it was more of a source of his own self-guidance and self-improvement. But this is very relevant to us. I highly recommend him. You already know because he's so famous. I just wanted to read one quote from this book from him. I hear you say, how unlucky that this should happen to me. Not at all. Say instead, how lucky I am, not broken by what had happened to me and not afraid of what is about to happen. So I think it's amazing. Here I go back to my studio, and my Pegasus visit is in the making. And here you could see the horse is looking more as a horse. And the poet is start to grow as well. And then I took him for the photo shoot near our studio. And the Pegasus finally arrives to visit his friend, poet, who was waiting for him for a millennia. And the arc of the thoughts of dreams and thoughts of poet finally reaches the Pegasus, and it provides the bridge to our world. And this is the back of the sculpture with arches. And here's the side, and I've been borrowing that braid. And speaking about arches, you probably know this iconic monument. It's Colosseum. And Roman arches were the foundation of Roman architectural mastery. So it allows Roman to make longer roads, bigger buildings, and better aqueducts. And Roman arch is the ancestor of modern architecture. So this Colosseum, it has 3 stories of 80 arches each. And it had been able to admit 50 to 80,000 spectators at the time. It started by Vespasian during the times when he had to distract the public from their miserable life, and there were gladiatorial matches and some fake boat battles and you name it. So it's absolutely amazing structure. Here's another arch. It's a triumphal arch of Constantine, and it was built in 315 in our era. And even though it's dedicated to Constantine, they were recycling different reliefs from 3 different emperors. Like there's the upper part is from Hadrian, I believe, and the middle part is these reliefs from Marcus Aurelius arch, and inside there are some Trajan ones, and these ones, the elongated rectangular ones, are made in Constantine era. And this image doesn't show how different and stylized the figures became during Constantine era. So it's a very controversial kind of art in terms of using these different reliefs from different arches, and maybe architects were using the artwork from previous arches because they didn't have time to create new art, or maybe the art during Constantine time was declining and it wasn't as great. Or it could be also that Constantine wanted to show how good he is, so he used the reliefs from different, from good emperors to show his good sides. So here's another arch. It's a really, really ancient one. It's next to our studio. It's called Porticus Octavia, and it was built by Augustus in 27 BC. Another place was arches at the Piazza Venezia Museum. And it's a courtyard where sometimes we would have lunches with my resident artists. So there were 3 resident artists, including me, Debbie from Australia, and Jeff Schmucki from Florida. Amazing artists, both of them. And here's my first arch, the beginning of a wall piece. And I made it the first couple. It's this patrician with poodle taking selfie, and they're just delighting themselves in this activity. And work doesn't stop at night for me, so here he is almost done. And then I took him to Palazzo Mattei. I'll show you in a second. I just want to tell you this amazing glaze that generously was given to me by Jeff Schmucki. He created it. It's a lava glaze, and it creates amazing effects. And here's my patrician with his poodle. And I like how he mimics the patrician which stands behind him, and it's at this wonderful place next to our studio, which is called Palazzo Mattei. Another ubiquitous animal that I got inspired from is a lion, and this lion is from the walls from Roman ghetto. And here's lion from Four Rivers Fountain by Lorenzo Bernini. I think he is absolutely magnificent. His expression and his posture, and he has been also made in bronze. This lion belongs to Villa Medici, and Villa Medici now hosts French Academy, and which was actually established there by Napoleon. So it has been there for a long time, and I used to go there to see classical Italian movies outside with French subtitles, so I could improve my Italian and my French. And this lion is amazing because it have been, there were so many copies in a variety of media that it's called Medici lion. And this is Villa. It's also amazing. This lion from another fountain, it's called Quattro Fontane. Don't get mixed up with Four Rivers. So there's Four Rivers fountain, and there is four fountains. So this is the one from Four Fountains, and the female figure behind him represents goddess Juno, and she is symbol of strength. So this is what I came up with, and it's called Trying Versace, and this goddess, she or protagonista, she could be somebody who would be Cybele in the bygone age, and now in the line would be in her carriage, and now she is just, the lion is no longer has to be in the carriage, and he has freedom, and this is how he looks like. And he has this little emblem of the chariot or a wheel. And now there's three. So the figure on the left, it's called Running Via Serpenti, and she holds a serpent. I made up the title. There's, but then it turns out that there is a Via Serpenti. It exists in Rome, and there are three arches, and they're together. Here she is, completed with stains and some white porcelain angle. And you'll see her in my studio. I have some embellishments after I brought her home. Another amazing monument. So as you could see, it's a fountain, and fountains where they've been providing water, drinking water, and decorating piazzas for more than 2,000 years. And the major fountain would be usually use two aqueducts in case one would shut down. So after the fall of Roman Empire, the aqueducts were wrecked, and so fountains stopped working. But in the 14th century, Pope Nicholas V decided to revive Rome, embellish the city, and he commissioned this. This is called Trevi Fountain. He was, so unfortunately, this fountain was realized, or fortunately, in only 18th century. So this fountain has been, it's the largest Baroque fountain in Rome. It has, in the center, there is a Neptune, and on the side, there is a figure of a virgin who showed the aqueduct to soldiers, the source of aqueduct. And on the right, the figure which represents Rome. Underneath, you see tritons, which are blowing conch shells, but they're also taming the hypotymi, the seahorses. And this fountain, according to data, collected 3,000 euros every day. People were throwing so much money, and then during the year, they threw $1.4 million, and money has been used to subsidize the needy in Rome. Also, it has some elements of neoclassicism because the building itself, it was the era when the Baroque was declining. So my next sculpture had to be an aquatic sculpture. And first I planned to make him with the dolphin because our studio is located on the Via Delfini, which means dolphins. But then I read this amazing myth about geese. So now he is seated and he has geese, which is, of course, has some aquatic elements. And I kept the aquatic ears in his face, in his head, and the geese who saved the Rome. I just want to tell you the legend. During the invasions and Gallic attacks, Gauls conquered the whole Rome except one neighborhood, this Capitoline Hill, and they were going to sneak in during the night, but then they were heard by the sacred flock in Juno temple, and they honked so loud that the Roman guards were able to hear them, and then they threw the invaders from the hill. So this sculpture is called Grato al Salvatore, which means grateful to Savior. And I took him also outside, and here he is finished. He has some feathers on his arch, and on the background you could see the Marcello Theater, which also has lots of arches. This is a really, really famous sculpture. It's called Apollo and Daphne by also Gian Lorenzo Bernini, which he made in 1622 to 1625. And the story about Daphne, that Apollo was struck by Cupid's love arrow, and he was chasing Daphne, but Daphne is struck by the repellent love arrow, so she doesn't want to do anything with man at this moment. But when he is completely next to her, she is praying to her father, who is Pegasus, god of river, to transform her body so she loses her beauty and she's no more attractive to Apollo. So Pegasus transforms her to laurel tree. And here we see Lorenzo Bernini depicts the moment when her feet became roots and her fingers are becoming the laurel branches and leaves. And here's my interpretation when her fingers and hands are becoming the wave. And I use this, again, amazing sculpture by Jeff. I love how it's so foamy. It really works for her. And she has also arches, and her hair is becoming fish here. This is the last sculpture that I produced in Rome. It's called Waiting for Mark Antonio, and it is about Mark and Antonio and Cleopatra. And this is Cleopatra, who was, as you all know, the queen of Egypt, and she has an affair with Mark Antonio. And although it was a mutual, like favorable affair, it had this political component where she would need Mark Antony to protect her crown and maintain the Egypt's independence, but also he was having the access to the riches and to the resources. They were really fondly of each other, and this depicts this moment when she waits for him. Also, she has arches and lovely background on this picture. And this is the view from our final installation exhibition. So here you could see my La Ragazza con Seaweed Gelato, Pegasus Visit, Daphne, and other sculptures. And here's another view with 3 wall pieces on the back of Pegasus Visit. And here they are closer. This is public visiting us. And this is an amazing couple. I don't know if they're here. I hope they could make it. It's really late in Rome. So on the left, you see Lori N, and she is an art historian. And Paolo is a famous, world famous ceramic sculptor. He exhibits everywhere. And they are organizers of Creta residency. If you ever decide to go to be a resident there, I highly recommend. Or if you're ever in Rome, stop by to say hello. They have my Ragazza con Gelato in their collection, because you're supposed to leave the piece with them. I'm going to show you what has been cooking in the studio. So these are 2 pieces that I really, really new. And the first, this one, a little bit older. I mean, they're both really young. And it's dedicated to this COVID, and the working title is 2 sides of moon. So one has this mask, it's not fired yet. And another one, can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, okay, great. And another one has the face like this. So these are like corals, and they've been in sync, kind of in sync with the moon, because I feel we're losing the sense of time now. So we're being, at least I feel like it, that we are, I'm watching the moon closely. And this one is during the, I finished it during the times of this the protests, so it has a little bit of this kind of a fiery effect. And on the other side, there is this eye, as if it could predict the future. So this is the rain god from after Roman residency, La Ragazza con Gelato. And I showed you this piece. It's called Don't Touch Your Face Unless Your Hand is Golden. And this is the new one. Which reality do you see? And this one.
It was just wonderful listening to you speak about all of the places, because I visited those when I was there for 2 weeks. I got to go as part of a study abroad group. I was the coordinator. So it was great to hear you talk about your experiences and see how you're inspired by those places too.
Thank you very much. Yeah.
I was going to share with you, Natasha, one visit. We were in Rome and there was a power outage. And the power outage was not only in Rome, but it was all of Italy and points beyond that. It was a major, massive failure. And when we went, there was no espresso,
Oh.
There was no power. There was no toast. There was nothing. And as we walked along,
No gelato either? Sorry.
it was actually, it was the first night of light that they were celebrating. I think it was maybe in 98 or something.
Mm-hmm.
And it was the night of light, and people were up all night long with their families and the teenagers, and parents with strollers with their children. And there was music everywhere, of every kind of music you could think of, and from contemporary to classical to big military band was playing at one point. And it was amazing. But the next morning, it was like this massive power failure. And I remember going to, we ran into someone in the hallway where we were staying, Locarno, and my husband said, the power is out. And he said, sir, it's out in all of Italy.
Oh.
So we just wandered around, but we saw the Trevi fountain,
Mm-hmm.
empty, no water in it.
No water in it.
No, because it's powered by probably
Oh, I see.
generators that pump the water through. And so that had been probably noonish. And as we were there, all of a sudden, way down the street, light blinked, and then another one. And it slowly kind of worked its way towards us.
Mm.
And the fountain, which was now completely empty, drained, dry, I mean, it was wet, but empty, started a trickle. And
These
then
kind
more,
of
and more, and it roared, and it finally came to life and filled up again. It was the most amazing experience.
Great.
Cool.
Thank you for sharing. Yeah, these memories you will never forget, right?
Oh,
If
no.
everything worked perfectly, then maybe, yeah.
Yeah, and I wanted to thank you for the fountains. I love Rome. I've been there many times, and I love all of those fountains. There's one at the 7 Steps that's a Bernini too, that people would step onto it and drink the water, and Italians would say, don't drink that water.
Oh, I've seen Italians pouring water in their containers all the time from the fountains.
I think it was this particular location.
Ah, maybe, yeah. Well, there are much more fountains. Of course, there's the Barca near Spanish Steps. Well, I just couldn't show you everything. There is a Vatican, which requires like, I don't know how many hours. Villa Borghese, I just showed you one sculpture, but it's enormous. There is Villa Farnesina, actually, which has amazing Raphael frescoes. I would go there every day, everywhere. The Capitolini Museum, which was right next to our studio, it's the oldest museum, one of the oldest in the world, maybe. And yeah, there's so much to see, and I can't wait until it will reopen again and we can all travel and experience. And what's great about it, residency, that I could work in the morning, then I would take a break during the lunch, and I would go to all those amazing sites to get inspired to see, museums, or like Caracalla Baths, for example. These are amazing. And then I'll come back to the studio and work until late. And then this is every morning, and then you see different things. And well, sometimes I would go to Milongas even. I don't know how I managed to do all of it, because I went at least to maybe like 5 or 6 Milongas. For those who don't know, Milonga is the place where people dance tango, and Rome is a hub, one of the world hubs for Argentine tango. So tango is a community. You see same people. You could meet them in San Francisco or in Paris or in Buenos Aires. So they all know each other. They know the same musicians, same dancers. So it's like artists, but I mean, visual artists, musicians are very similar. So it was an amazing, amazing experience for me.
It shows in your work. It's absolutely inspiring.
Thank you. This is
Question. So
yes.
maybe a silly question, of course, but you started working on glass was after you returned from Rome, right?
Which one?
You started working on glass with
Yes.
glass after the return from, but there's no connect, not that something in Rome inspired you to add glass to the work, or there was no connection?
Actually, with glass, I've been dreaming of working with glass long time before I went to Rome, because I had the sculptures from the series Look What I Got, Doctor, and I want them to be transparent because I want the inner essence of them to be visible. And so I've been thinking about it, but in Rome, yes, you could see glass, but at that particular moment, I didn't look at the glass.
How do you do the clay and glass pieces? Do you do the clay first or the glass? How does it work?
So I create the glass pieces first, and I make sure there are indentations. So I have some idea in mind, like for example, either it's going to be the cloud, the body in the shape of a cloud, and then I make some indentation in the places of hands and so, or like I want to show you just one piece. This one is the figure, and I knew something is going to be inside there. So first I made the glass piece, and then I create the clay piece. And I really enjoyed the hanging devices here. They're really easy to hang.
Thank you.
Sure.
Thank you for doing this too. It was fascinating to see how you were inspired by your time in Rome, by the visual inspiration.
Robert, what were you showing?
Oh, that's right.
Poodle one.
Oh, that's the patrician.
Yeah.
Are you at the gallery now? Oh,
Yeah.
fantastic. Yeah. That's the guy. He traveled all the way to San Francisco.
Wow.
There's 2018 Rome
Uh-huh.
on the back.
Wow. Thank you.
It's still available.
All right. Well, if there's no more questions or somebody wants to hang out and talk to me privately, I'm here. Or
Thank you so much. It's so nice seeing, I feel like everything kind of in more context of both space and time. I really love the stories that go along with them. So thank you for sharing.
thank you, Tammy.
Yeah, well, this was really
Thank
great.
you so
I'm
much.
glad
It was
I
really
came.
great.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you, Natasha.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you for coming.
See you next time.